Sarah Mitchell looked at her phone and felt her heart race. She was already 20 minutes late for her wedding dress fitting. This was the most important appointment of her life, and she was going to miss it. She ran through her expensive apartment, grabbing her purse and keys. Her high heels made loud clicking sounds on the marble floor as she rushed to the elevator. Sarah lived on the 15th floor of one of the city's most expensive buildings. The doorman always smiled and opened doors for her. Today, she barely looked at him as she rushed past. The morning had not gone well for Sarah. First, her alarm clock did not work. Then her coffee maker broke. After that, she could not find her favorite earrings. Everything seemed to go wrong on this important day. Sarah pushed through the glass doors of her building and stepped onto the busy street. Cars, buses, and taxis filled the road. People walked quickly on the sidewalk, all going to their own important places. The city was always busy, but today it felt even more crowded. She looked left and right for a taxi. Her hand shook as she held up her arm to signal for one. 3 taxis passed by without stopping. They already had passengers inside. Sarah felt more worried with each passing minute. Come on, she said to herself. I cannot be this late. Sarah had planned this wedding for 8 months. Every detail had to be perfect. The flowers, the music, the food. She had chosen everything carefully. But the most important thing was her wedding dress. She had ordered it from the best bridal shop in the city. Today was her final fitting, just 3 days before her wedding. Finally, a yellow taxi stopped in front of her. Sarah felt relief wash over her body. The taxi was not new. It had some dents on the side and the yellow paint was faded in some places. But Sarah did not care. She just needed to get to the bridal shop fast. The taxi driver was a man who looked tired. His name was Marcus Rodriguez, though Sarah did not know this yet. Marcus had been driving his taxi since 5 in the morning. It was now almost noon and he had been working for 7 hours without a break. His eyes were red from tiredness and his clothes were a bit wrinkled. Marcus had driven many different people that morning. There was the businessman who talked loudly on his phone the whole trip. Then came the old woman who wanted to tell him about her grandchildren. After that, he drove 2 college students who argued about their test grades. Each passenger was different, but Marcus treated them all with respect. Sarah opened the back door of the taxi and threw herself into the seat. She did not look at Marcus or say hello. Instead, she immediately pulled out her phone and started typing a message. I need to go to Elegant Bridal Boutique on 5th Street, Sarah said without looking up from her phone. Her voice sounded sharp and impatient. And I need to get there fast. I'm already very late. Marcus looked at her in his rearview mirror. He could see that she was dressed in expensive clothes. Her handbag looked like it cost more money than he made in a month. Her hair was perfect and her makeup looked like it was done by a professional. Yes, ma'am, Marcus said politely. I know where that is. It will take about 15 minutes with this traffic. 15 minutes? Sarah said loudly. That's too long. Can't you go faster? Marcus started driving toward 5th Street. He knew the city very well. He had been a taxi driver for 2 years while he finished school. During the day, he drove taxi. At night, he studied for his business degree. It was hard work, but he needed the money. I'll do my best, ma'am, Marcus said, but there's a lot of traffic today. There was an accident on Main Street, so everyone is using this road instead. Sarah made an angry sound and continued looking at her phone. She typed fast messages to her friends. Can't believe how slow this traffic is, she wrote to her friend Jenny. This driver better know a faster way. As they drove through the city, Sarah became more and more frustrated. Every red light made her tap her foot. When other cars moved slowly, she sighed loudly. She looked at her phone every few seconds, watching the time pass. Marcus tried to take the fastest route he knew. He turned down a side street that was usually less busy. But today, even the side streets were crowded with cars. Construction workers were fixing a water pipe, which made the traffic even slower. Why did you come this way? Sarah asked. Her voice sounded angry. This is taking forever. I'm sorry, ma'am, Marcus said. This street is usually faster. I didn't know about the construction. Sarah rolled her eyes and went back to her phone. She called her friend Lisa, who was supposed to meet her at the bridal shop. Lisa, I'm going to be so late, Sarah said into her phone. I'm stuck in traffic with this driver who doesn't seem to know the city very well.
Can you call the shop and tell them I'm coming?
Marcus heard every word Sarah said. He felt a little hurt, but he stayed quiet. He had lived in this city his whole life. He knew every street and every shortcut, but sometimes even the best drivers got stuck in unexpected traffic. The taxi moved slowly through the busy streets. Sarah continued to make phone calls and send messages. She complained to everyone about being late, but she never once asked Marcus if there was anything he could do to help. As they got closer to the bridal shop, Sarah started to feel a little better. She could see the sign for 5th Street ahead. Soon she would be at her appointment. Her wedding dress was waiting for her and everything would be perfect. Marcus pulled the taxi up to the front of Elegant Bridal Boutique. The shop had big windows with beautiful white dresses displayed inside. Fresh flowers decorated the entrance and everything looked elegant and expensive. "Here we are, ma'am," Marcus said. "That will be $12.50. Sarah looked at the meter and opened her purse. She was still frustrated about being late, but at least she had finally arrived. Her perfect wedding was just 3 days away and nothing was going to ruin it. Little did Sarah know that this taxi ride was about to change everything in ways she could never imagine. Sarah paid the taxi fare but did not give Marcus any tip. She grabbed her purse and got out of the taxi quickly. As she walked toward the bridal shop, she could hear Marcus starting his car engine behind her. She did not turn around to look at him. Inside the bridal boutique, everything was white and gold. Soft music played in the background and the smell of fresh flowers filled the air. The shop owner, Mrs. Chen, greeted Sarah with a big smile. "Sarah, we were getting worried about you," Mrs. Chen said. "Your appointment was supposed to start 30 minutes ago." I know, Sarah said, still feeling frustrated. "The traffic was terrible and my taxi driver didn't know the best routes. Some people just don't know how to do their jobs properly." Mrs. Chen nodded politely and led Sarah to the fitting room. The wedding dress was hanging there looking perfect and beautiful. It was made of silk and lace with tiny pearls sewn into the fabric. Sarah had spent $3,000 on this dress and it was worth every penny. As Sarah tried on the dress, she felt better. The dress fit perfectly and she looked like a princess. Mrs. Chen made small adjustments to the length and checked that everything was exactly right. "You look beautiful," Mrs. Chen said. "Your wedding is going to be perfect." Sarah smiled and looked at herself in the mirror. In 3 days, she would marry David Rodriguez, the man of her dreams. David was successful, handsome, and kind. He owned a small but growing business that helped other companies with their computer systems. Sarah had met him at a party 6 months ago, and they fell in love quickly. After the fitting, Sarah felt much better about her day. She had been worried about nothing. The dress was perfect, and her wedding would be beautiful. She thanked Mrs. Chen and left the shop feeling happy and excited. Sarah decided to walk to her favorite coffee shop nearby. She needed to relax and think about all the wonderful things that would happen at her wedding. The coffee shop was small and cozy, with comfortable chairs and tables near the windows. She ordered her usual drink, a large coffee with extra cream and 2 sugars. As she waited for her order, Sarah thought about how different her life would be after the wedding. She would be Mrs. Rodriguez instead of Miss Mitchell. She would live in David's beautiful house instead of her apartment. Everything was going to be perfect. Sarah's phone rang while she was drinking her coffee. It was her mother calling to talk about the wedding plans. "Hi, Mom," Sarah said. "I just finished my dress fitting. Everything looks perfect." "That's wonderful, dear," her mother said. "I can't wait to see you in that dress. Have you met all of David's family yet?" Sarah paused for a moment. This was something that had been bothering her a little bit. "Well, not all of them," she said. "I've met his parents and his sister, but I haven't met his brother yet. David says he's been very busy with work and school." "What does his brother do?" her mother asked. "I'm not really sure," Sarah admitted. "David mentioned that he has some kind of job during the day and goes to school at night, but we haven't talked about it much. I'm sure he has a good job, though. David's whole family seems very successful." Sarah's mother continued talking about the wedding flowers and the music, but Sarah was thinking about David's brother. She realized she didn't know very much about him. David had talked about him many times, always with love and respect. He said his brother was hardworking and smart, but Sarah had never asked for details about what kind of work he did. After talking to her mother, Sarah called her friend Jenny. Jenny was going to be one of her bridesmaids, and they needed to talk about the rehearsal dinner plans. "Jenny, can you believe I was almost late to my dress fitting today?" Sarah said. "I had the worst taxi driver. He didn't know the city at all and took me the slowest way possible." "That's so annoying," Jenny said. Did you complain to the taxi company? No, but I should have, Sarah said. Some people just don't take their job seriously. I mean, if you're going to be a taxi driver, at least learn the streets properly. It's not that hard, Jenny laughed. Well, at least you made it to your appointment. How did the dress look? Perfect, Sarah said with a big smile. I can't wait for you to see it at the wedding. Everything is going to be so beautiful. They talked for a while about the wedding plans. Sarah felt excited and happy as she described all the details. The flowers would be white roses and baby's breath. The music would be played by a string quartet. The food would be prepared by the best catering company in the city. I just can't wait to marry David, Sarah said. He's everything I ever wanted in a husband. Smart, successful, handsome, and kind. And his family seems really nice, too. Have you met his whole family yet? Jenny asked. Almost everyone, Sarah said. Just his brother left to meet. But I'm sure he's just as wonderful as the rest of them. After hanging up with Jenny, Sarah finished her coffee and decided to do some shopping. She wanted to buy a few more things for her honeymoon trip. She and David were going to Hawaii for 2 weeks after the wedding. As Sarah walked through the expensive shopping district, she felt proud of her life. She had a good job working for a marketing company. She lived in a beautiful apartment. She wore nice clothes and could afford expensive things. Soon, she would be married to a successful man, and her life would be even better. Sarah went into several stores and bought new clothes for her honeymoon. She bought a beautiful red dress, new sandals, and a designer handbag. Everything she bought was expensive, but Sarah didn't worry about money. She worked hard and deserved nice things. While she was shopping, Sarah thought about the taxi ride again. She felt annoyed all over again about how slow the driver had been. People like that driver needed to work harder and learn their jobs better. If everyone just tried a little harder, the world would be a much better place. Sarah didn't think much more about the taxi driver after that. She had more important things to worry about, like her wedding and her future with David. In just 3 days, she would be walking down the aisle to marry the man she loved. But sometimes, life has surprises that we never see coming. Sometimes the people we think we know best can surprise us. And sometimes, the people we think we understand the least can teach us the most important lessons of all. Sarah had no idea that her perfect wedding was about to become much more complicated than she ever imagined. 2 days before her wedding, Sarah was at her office finishing up some last-minute work. She wanted everything to be completed before she left for her honeymoon. Her desk was covered with papers and she was trying to focus, but her mind kept thinking about the wedding. Her phone rang, and she saw David's name on the screen. Her heart always felt happy when he called her. "Hi, sweetheart," Sarah said, answering the phone with a big smile. "Hi, beautiful," David said. His voice always made her feel warm and loved. "How's your day going? Are you getting nervous about the wedding?" "A little bit," Sarah admitted. "But mostly I'm just excited. I can't wait to be your wife." "I can't wait either," David said. "Listen, I wanted to talk to you about tomorrow night's rehearsal dinner. My brother Marcus finally confirmed he can make it. I'm so happy you'll finally get to meet him." Sarah felt curious about this mysterious brother she still hadn't met. "Tell me more about him," she said. "What kind of work does he do again?" David's voice filled with pride when he talked about his brother. "Marcus is amazing, Sarah. He works so hard. During the day, he has a job that helps him pay for school. At night, he's finishing his business degree. He wants to start his own company someday." "What kind of day job does he have?" Sarah asked. "He drives a taxi," David said simply. "It's not easy work, but it pays well and gives him flexible hours so he can study." "I'm so proud of how hard he works for his dreams." Sarah almost dropped her phone. Did David just say his brother was a taxi driver? She thought about the rude, slow driver from her dress-fitting appointment. Suddenly, she felt embarrassed that her future brother-in-law had such a simple job. "A taxi driver?" Sarah said, trying to keep her voice normal. "That's interesting." "I know it might not sound like much," David said, "but Marcus is saving money and learning about business at the same time. He's really smart, Sarah. You're going to love him." Sarah didn't know what to say. She had always imagined that David's family would all have good professional jobs. His parents were both teachers, which was respectable. His sister was a nurse, which was also a good job. But a taxi driver? That was not what she had expected. "I'm sure he's very nice," Sarah said, but her voice sounded a little cold. David didn't seem to notice her tone. "He is. Marcus has always been like a second father to me. When our dad got sick a few years ago, Marcus worked extra hours to help pay for the medical bills. He's the most generous person I know. After they hung up, Sarah sat at her desk feeling confused. She loved David and she trusted his judgment about people. If he said his brother was wonderful, then Marcus must be a good person. But Sarah couldn't help feeling disappointed that her new brother-in-law was just a taxi driver. Sarah tried to focus on her work, but she kept thinking about what her friends would say when they met Marcus. Would they think less of David's family? Would they wonder why Sarah was marrying into a family where someone drove a taxi for work? Later that evening, Sarah was at home packing for her honeymoon when her friend Lisa called. "Are you getting excited?" Lisa asked. "Tomorrow night is the rehearsal dinner." "Yes, I'm excited," Sarah said. "But I just found out something about David's family that surprised me." "What is it?" Lisa asked curiously. "His brother is a taxi driver," Sarah said, lowering her voice as if it was a secret. "So?" Lisa said. "What's wrong with that?" "Nothing's wrong with it exactly," Sarah said quickly. "It's just not what I expected. David's parents are teachers and his sister is a nurse. Those are professional jobs. But driving a taxi—" "Sarah, you're being silly," Lisa said firmly. "There's nothing wrong with honest work. Besides, you said he's going to school too, right?" "Yes, he's studying business," Sarah admitted. "David says he wants to start his own company." "Then what are you worried about?" Lisa asked. "He sounds like he's working hard to build a better future." "That's admirable." Sarah knew Lisa was right, but she still felt uncomfortable. She had grown up in a family where education and professional jobs were very important. Her father was a lawyer and her mother was a doctor. All her friends had similar backgrounds. She wasn't used to being around people who did manual work or service jobs. The next morning, Sarah woke up feeling nervous about meeting Marcus. She spent extra time choosing her outfit for the rehearsal dinner. She wanted to look perfect and professional. Maybe if she looked impressive enough, people wouldn't focus on the fact that her brother-in-law drove a taxi. Sarah decided to take a taxi to the restaurant where the rehearsal dinner would be held. As she got into the back seat, she looked at the driver. He was an older man with gray hair and a kind face. "Where to, miss?" he asked politely. "Romano's restaurant on Oak Street," Sarah said. As they drove through the city, Sarah found herself studying the taxi driver. His car was clean and he drove carefully. He knew exactly where the restaurant was without needing directions. When they hit traffic, he took a different route that was faster. "Have you been driving a taxi for a long time?" Sarah asked. 23 years, the man said proudly. "I've seen this city change a lot over the years. I've driven all kinds of people, rich, poor, young, old. Everyone needs to get somewhere and I help them do it." "Don't you want to do something better?" Sarah asked without thinking. The man looked at her in the rearview mirror. "Better?" he said. "Miss, I own my own taxi. I make good money. I've put 3 kids through college with this job. I don't think there's anything better than honest work that helps people and supports your family." Sarah felt ashamed of her question. This man was proud of his work and he had good reasons to be. He had built a successful life and helped his children get good educations. When they arrived at Romano's restaurant, Sarah gave the driver a generous tip. "Thank you, miss," he said with a smile. "You have a good evening." As Sarah walked into the restaurant, she thought about what the taxi driver had said. Maybe she had been wrong to feel embarrassed about Marcus's job. Maybe driving a taxi wasn't something to be ashamed of at all. The restaurant was beautifully decorated for the rehearsal dinner. David's family was already there, along with Sarah's parents and the wedding party. David came over to hug Sarah as soon as she walked in. "You look beautiful," he said, kissing her cheek. "Are you ready to meet Marcus?" Sarah looked around the restaurant. She saw David's parents, his sister, and several other people she recognized. But she didn't see anyone who looked like a taxi driver. "Where is he?" Sarah asked. "He'll be here soon," David said. "He had to work until 7, but he's coming straight here." Sarah spent the next hour talking to the other guests and trying not to think about meeting Marcus. Everyone was excited about the wedding and the atmosphere was happy and festive. Maybe everything would be fine after all. At 7:30, Sarah was talking to her bridesmaids when she heard David's excited voice across the restaurant. "Marcus, you made it," David called out. Sarah turned around to see who David was greeting. A man in a clean white shirt and dark pants had just walked into the restaurant. He looked tired, like he had been working all day, but he was smiling as he hugged David. Sarah stared at the man and felt her heart stop beating for a moment. She knew that face. She had seen those eyes before. This was the taxi driver from her dress-fitting appointment 2 days ago. Marcus Rodriguez looked across the restaurant and saw Sarah staring at him. Their eyes met and Sarah saw recognition flash across his face. He remembered her too. For a few seconds, they just looked at each other in shock. "Sarah," David called, walking toward her with Marcus beside him. "Come meet my brother." Sarah felt like her legs had turned to stone. She couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. This couldn't be happening. The rude taxi driver who didn't know the city streets was David's beloved brother. "Sarah, this is Marcus," David said proudly, putting his arm around his brother's shoulders. "Marcus, this is Sarah, the amazing woman I'm going to marry tomorrow." Marcus stepped forward and held out his hand to Sarah. His face was calm and polite, but Sarah could see surprise in his eyes. "Nice to meet you, Sarah," Marcus said quietly. "David has told me so many wonderful things about you." Sarah forced herself to shake his hand. Her hand was shaking and she hoped no one would notice. "Nice to meet you too," Sarah said, but her voice came out as almost a whisper. David was beaming with happiness. "I'm so glad you two are finally meeting. Marcus, I was just telling Sarah how hard you work with your taxi job and school. She was impressed by your dedication." Sarah felt her face turn red. She had not been impressed at all. She had been rude and dismissive. She had complained about Marcus to everyone she knew, and now she found out he was going to be her brother-in-law. "It's honest work," Marcus said simply, still looking at Sarah. "I enjoy meeting different people every day." "Marcus is being modest," David continued. "He's one of the hardest working people I know, and he's so close to finishing his business degree. Tell Sarah about your business plan, Marcus." Marcus looked uncomfortable with all the attention. "Maybe we should talk about that later," he said. "Tonight is about celebrating your wedding." David's father came over to join the conversation. "Marcus, how was work today?" he asked, giving his son a hug. "Busy," Marcus said. "I had a lot of different passengers. Some were very interesting." Sarah felt sure that Marcus was talking about her. She wanted to disappear or run out of the restaurant, but she couldn't leave without everyone asking questions. "Well, you're here now and that's what matters," David's father said. "Your brother has been so excited for you to meet Sarah." The rest of the evening was torture for Sarah. She tried to act normal and happy, but inside she felt sick with embarrassment and worry. Every time she looked at Marcus, she remembered the terrible things she had said about him. She had called him incompetent. She had made fun of his accent. She had treated him like he was stupid and worthless. Marcus was polite to everyone at the dinner. He talked to Sarah's parents and complimented them on raising such a lovely daughter. He joked with the bridesmaids and groomsmen. He gave a beautiful toast about how happy he was to see David find true love. "David is the best brother anyone could ask for," Marcus said, raising his glass. "He's kind, generous, and loyal. Sarah, you're getting a wonderful husband, and I'm happy to welcome you into our family." Everyone clapped and cheered. Sarah tried to smile, but she felt like crying. Marcus was being so kind and gracious, especially considering how badly she had treated him. After dinner, the wedding party went through the rehearsal for the ceremony. Sarah learned that Marcus would be David's best man. This meant he would be standing right next to David during the wedding ceremony. Sarah would have to look at him through the whole wedding, remembering her terrible behavior. During the rehearsal, Sarah made several mistakes. She forgot when to walk and where to stand. The wedding coordinator had to remind her of the steps several times. "Are you feeling okay?" David asked during a break. "You seem a little distracted." "I'm just nervous," Sarah said, which was true. "It's a big day tomorrow." "Don't worry," David said, hugging her. "Everything will be perfect. And I'm so happy that you and Marcus finally met. I can tell you two are going to get along great." Sarah nodded and tried to smile, but inside she felt terrible. She kept stealing glances at Marcus during the rehearsal. He was being professional and kind to everyone, including her. But she could tell he was watching her too. After the rehearsal was over, people started saying goodbye and going home. Sarah was getting ready to leave when Marcus approached her. "Sarah," he said quietly, "could I talk to you for a minute? Alone?" Sarah's heart started beating fast. This was the moment she had been dreading all evening. "Of course," she said, trying to sound calm. Marcus led her to a quiet corner of the restaurant where no one else could hear them. "I want you to know," Marcus said, "that I haven't told David about our previous meeting. I don't plan to tell him unless you want me to." Sarah felt a wave of relief and gratitude. "Thank you," she said. I owe you an apology." "You don't owe me anything," Marcus said. "We all have bad days. I'm sure you were stressed about your wedding dress appointment." His kindness made Sarah feel even worse about her behavior. "That's no excuse for how I treated you," she said. "I was rude and disrespectful." "I'm sorry," Marcus nodded. "Apology accepted," he said. "Tomorrow is David's wedding day. Let's focus on making it perfect for him." "Thank you for being so understanding," Sarah said, "and for not telling David." "David loves you very much," Marcus said. "He talks about you all the time. He says you're kind and caring and generous. I'm sure the person I met in the taxi was not the real you." Sarah wanted to tell Marcus that he was wrong. The person in the taxi was the real her, impatient, judgmental, and sometimes cruel to people she thought were beneath her. But she couldn't say that out loud. "I'll see you tomorrow," Marcus said. "Try to get some rest. It's going to be a big day." As Sarah drove home that night, her mind was spinning with thoughts and emotions. Tomorrow was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, but now it felt complicated and scary. She was marrying into a family with a man she had treated terribly. How could she face Marcus at the altar? How could she pretend that everything was fine when she knew the truth about herself? Sarah realized that her perfect wedding was about to become a test of her character, and she wasn't sure if she was going to pass. Sarah woke up on her wedding day feeling like she hadn't slept at all. She had spent most of the night thinking about Marcus and feeling ashamed of how she had treated him. Every time she closed her eyes, she remembered the look on his face when she had been so rude to him in the taxi. The morning sun was shining through her bedroom windows, and she could hear birds singing outside. It was going to be a beautiful day for a wedding. But Sarah didn't feel the joy and excitement she had expected to feel on the most important day of her life. Her phone rang, and she saw her mother's name on the screen. "Good morning, my beautiful bride," her mother said happily. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous," Sarah said truthfully. "That's completely normal," her mother said. "Every bride feels nervous on her wedding day, but once you see David waiting for you at the altar, all those nerves will disappear." Sarah hoped her mother was right, but she was worried about more than just normal wedding nerves. She was worried about seeing Marcus standing next to David as his best man. "I'll be over in an hour to help you get ready," her mother continued. "Your hairstylist will be there at 9, and your makeup artist will arrive at 10:30. Everything is perfectly planned." After hanging up with her mother, Sarah tried to eat some breakfast, but her stomach felt sick with worry, and she could only manage a few bites of toast and some orange juice. Sarah's apartment was soon filled with people helping her prepare for the wedding. Her mother arrived with fresh flowers for her hair. Her 3 bridesmaids came with their dresses and makeup bags. The hairstylist set up her equipment in Sarah's bathroom. The makeup artist spread her brushes and colors across Sarah's bedroom dresser. "You're going to look so beautiful," said Jenny, one of Sarah's bridesmaids. "I can't wait to see you in that dress." "David is so lucky," added Lisa, another bridesmaid. "You two are perfect for each other." Sarah tried to smile and act excited, but inside she felt heavy with guilt and worry. Her friends and family were so happy for her, but they didn't know about the terrible mistake she had made with Marcus. The hairstylist began working on Sarah's hair, curling it and pinning it up in an elegant style. The makeup artist carefully applied foundation, eyeshadow, and lipstick to make Sarah look perfect for her wedding photos. "Tell us about David's family," said Emma, the 3rd bridesmaid. "Did you finally meet his brother last night?" Sarah's heart began beating faster. "Yes, I met Marcus. What's he like?" Jenny asked. Sarah paused, trying to think of what to say. "He's very hard-working and devoted to David. David talks about him all the time," Lisa said. "He really looks up to his older brother." "Actually, Marcus is younger," Sarah's mother corrected. "David told me Marcus is 3 years younger than him." Sarah was surprised. She had assumed Marcus was older because David spoke about him with such respect and admiration. Learning that Marcus was actually younger made Sarah feel even worse. David looked up to his younger brother because Marcus was working so hard to better himself and help his family. "What kind of work does Marcus do?" Emma asked. Sarah felt her cheeks get warm. "He drives a taxi while he finishes his business degree." "That sounds really responsible," Jenny said. "Working and going to school at the same time must be exhausting." "David says Marcus helped pay for their father's medical bills when he was sick," Sarah's mother added. "That's a very generous young man," Sarah nodded but didn't say anything. She was learning more about Marcus's character, and it made her feel even more ashamed of how she had judged him based on his job. As the morning continued, more details about the wedding day fell into place. The flowers were delivered to the church. The photographers arrived to take pictures of Sarah getting ready. The caterers were setting up at the reception hall. Sarah put on her beautiful wedding dress with help from her mother and bridesmaids. The dress looked even more perfect than it had during her fitting. The silk was smooth and elegant, and the lace details were delicate and beautiful. "Oh, Sarah," her mother said with tears in her eyes, "you look like a princess." Looking at herself in the mirror, Sarah should have felt like the happiest woman in the world. She was wearing her dream dress, about to marry the man she loved, surrounded by family and friends who cared about her. But all she could think about was the disappointed look in Marcus's eyes when she had been so cruel to him. The photographer took many pictures of Sarah getting ready. She smiled for each photo, but the smiles felt forced and fake. She kept thinking about how she would feel looking at these pictures in the future, remembering the guilt and shame she felt on what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. "The cars are here," Emma announced, looking out the window. "It's time to go to the church." Sarah's father had arranged for a luxury car to take Sarah and her bridesmaids to the church. Another car would take Sarah's parents and other family members. Sarah had wanted everything to be elegant and perfect for her wedding day. As they drove to the church, Sarah looked out the window at the city streets. She saw taxis driving by and wondered if any of the drivers were working as hard as Marcus to build better lives for themselves and their families. She had never thought about taxi drivers as real people with dreams and goals before meeting Marcus. "Look at all those people," Lisa said, pointing to the sidewalks. "Everyone looks so busy and important." Sarah watched the people walking on the sidewalks. There were men in expensive suits and women in designer clothes. But there were also people in simpler clothes, construction workers, store clerks, delivery drivers. For the first time, Sarah realized that all of these people had their own stories, their own struggles, and their own dreams. She had been so focused on her own world of expensive things and professional jobs that she had never really seen other people as equals. When they arrived at the church, Sarah could see guests walking up the front steps. Many of them were her friends and family, people who lived similar lives to hers. But she also saw David's family and friends. They looked just as happy and excited as her own guests, even though some of them might have simpler jobs or less money. "Are you ready?" Sarah's father asked, taking her arm. Sarah looked at the beautiful church with its tall windows and stone walls. Inside, David was waiting for her at the altar. Marcus would be standing beside him as his best man. All of their family and friends were there to celebrate their love and commitment to each other. "I'm ready," Sarah said, but her voice was shaky. As they walked up the church steps, Sarah tried to prepare herself for what was about to happen. She was about to promise to love and honor David for the rest of her life. She was about to become part of his family, which included Marcus. She was about to face the man she had treated so badly and somehow find a way to make things right. The church doors opened, and Sarah could hear the wedding music beginning to play. Her new life was about to start, but first she had to face the consequences of her old behavior. The church music began to play, and Sarah could hear all the guests standing up inside. This was the moment she had been dreaming about for months. She was about to walk down the aisle to marry the man she loved. Sarah's father squeezed her arm gently. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," he whispered. "David is a lucky man." The large wooden doors of the church opened wide. Sarah could see the long aisle stretching out in front of her, decorated with white roses and baby's breath. Candles flickered on both sides, creating a warm, romantic glow. All the guests were standing and turned to look at her, but Sarah's eyes went straight to the altar at the front of the church. There was David, looking handsome in his black tuxedo with a huge smile on his face. His eyes were bright with love and joy as he watched her begin to walk toward him. And there, standing right beside David, was Marcus. Sarah had known Marcus would be there as David's best man. She had tried to prepare herself for this moment all morning. But seeing him standing there in his perfectly fitted tuxedo, looking clean and professional and handsome, was still a shock. Marcus looked completely different from the tired taxi driver she had met 3 days ago. His hair was neatly styled. His face was clean-shaven. His tuxedo was elegant and expensive-looking. If Sarah had seen him anywhere else, she might not have recognized him at first. but it was definitely the same man she had been so cruel to in the taxi. The same man she had mocked and dismissed. The same man she had treated like he was beneath her. Sarah's steps became slower and less steady as she walked down the aisle. Her father had to gently guide her to keep her moving forward. She tried to smile at the guests, but her face felt frozen with shock and embarrassment. Marcus was watching her walk toward the altar. His face was calm and professional, but Sarah could see in his eyes that he remembered everything that had happened between them. He knew exactly who she really was, even if no one else in the church knew the truth. David's face was glowing with happiness as Sarah got closer to him. He looked like the luckiest man in the world. Sarah could see his parents in the front row, beaming with pride and joy. David's sister was wiping happy tears from her eyes. All of these people loved David and were excited to welcome Sarah into their family. They had no idea that Sarah had already met Marcus and had treated him terribly. They thought she was a kind, loving person who would be a perfect addition to their family. Sarah finally reached the altar, and her father gave her hand to David. David's hand was warm and strong, and his eyes were full of love. "You look incredible," David whispered to her. "I love you so much." Sarah tried to smile back at him, but her eyes kept glancing over at Marcus. He was standing so close to them, holding David's wedding ring and ready to hand it over at the right moment in the ceremony. The minister began speaking about love and commitment and the sacred bond of marriage. Sarah tried to focus on his words, but she kept thinking about the conversation she had had with Marcus the night before. He had been so kind and forgiving, even though she didn't deserve it. "Marriage is about seeing the best in each other," the minister was saying. "It's about loving someone completely, including their flaws and imperfections. It's about growing together and becoming better people because of the love you share." Sarah felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but they weren't tears of joy. They were tears of guilt and shame. How could she promise to be a good wife to David when she had shown such ugly behavior to his beloved brother? "Do you, David Rodriguez, take Sarah Mitchell to be your wife?" the minister asked. "I do," David said firmly, his voice strong and sure. "Do you, Sarah Mitchell, take David Rodriguez to be your husband?" Sarah looked into David's loving eyes. Then she glanced at Marcus, who was watching her with a calm, patient expression. She thought about all the guests in the church who were waiting for her answer. She thought about her parents, who had raised her to be better than the person she had been in that taxi. "I do," Sarah said, but her voice was shaky. Marcus stepped forward to give David the wedding ring. As he handed it to his brother, Marcus caught Sarah's eye for just a moment. His look wasn't angry or mean. Instead, he gave her a small, encouraging nod, as if he was telling her that everything would be okay. David slipped the ring onto Sarah's finger, and then Sarah put David's ring on his hand. The minister pronounced them husband and wife. "You may kiss the bride," the minister said. David leaned forward and kissed Sarah gently. All the guests cheered and clapped. The church filled with the sound of celebration and joy, but Sarah felt like she was living in two different worlds. On the outside, everything was perfect. She had just married the man of her dreams in a beautiful ceremony, surrounded by people who loved them. On the inside, she was struggling with the knowledge that she had failed a test of character before her marriage had even begun. As they walked back down the aisle together as husband and wife, Sarah could see all the happy faces of their guests. Her friends were crying tears of joy. David's family was beaming with pride. Everyone was so happy for them. Marcus walked behind them with Sarah's maid of honor. He was smiling and celebrating along with everyone else. But Sarah knew that he understood something about her that no one else in that church knew. Outside the church, there were more photos and congratulations. Sarah and David posed for pictures with their families and wedding party. Everyone was laughing and hugging and celebrating. "Welcome to the family, Sarah," David's mother said, giving her a warm hug. "We're so happy to have you." "Thank you," Sarah said. "I'm happy to be part of your family." David's father hugged her too. "David chose well," he said. "We can see how much you two love each other." Then Marcus stepped forward. "Congratulations, Sarah," he said, extending his hand to shake hers. "I hope you and David will be very happy together." "Thank you, Marcus," Sarah said quietly. Their handshake lasted just a moment, but in that moment, Sarah felt the weight of everything that had happened between them. As they rode to the reception in the decorated car, David held Sarah's hand and talked excitedly about how perfect the ceremony had been. "I'm so glad you finally got to meet Marcus," David said. "I could tell you two hit it off right away. He told me this morning that he thinks I'm very lucky to be marrying you." Sarah's heart ached as she listened to David's words. Marcus had said good things about her to David even after the way she had treated him. His kindness and generosity made Sarah realize how much she needed to change and grow as a person. "He seems like a wonderful person," Sarah said softly. "He is," David agreed. "Marcus has always been my hero. He's taught me so much about working hard and treating people with respect. I hope our kids will grow up to be as good as he is." Sarah looked out the car window and made a silent promise to herself. She would find a way to make things right with Marcus. She would learn from this experience and become a better person. She would prove that she was worthy of David's love and worthy of being part of his family. But first, she had to get through the wedding reception, where she would have to continue pretending that everything was perfect while dealing with the truth about who she really was. The wedding reception was held in a beautiful hotel ballroom, decorated with white flowers and twinkling lights. Round tables were set with fine china and crystal glasses. Everything looked elegant and perfect, just as Sarah had planned. Sarah and David sat at the head table with their wedding party. Marcus sat just a few seats away from Sarah, and she was very aware of his presence throughout the dinner. Every time she looked in his direction, she remembered the taxi ride and felt ashamed all over again. During dinner, David's father stood up to make a speech. He tapped his glass with a fork to get everyone's attention. "I want to say a few words about my sons," David's father began. "David and Marcus have always made their mother and me very proud. They are both hardworking, kind, and generous young men." The guests listened quietly as David's father continued his speech. "David has found a wonderful woman in Sarah," he said, looking at her with warm eyes. "But I also want to talk about Marcus, who has been such an important part of David's life and our family." Sarah felt her stomach tighten as David's father began talking about Marcus. 3 years ago, when I had my heart attack and couldn't work for several months, our family was worried about money. We had medical bills and other expenses, and we didn't know how we would pay for everything." Sarah had not heard this story before. She looked at David, who was listening to his father with love and respect in his eyes. "Marcus was only 22 years old at the time," David's father continued. "He was in college working part-time at a restaurant. But when he saw that our family needed help, he made a big decision. He got a second job driving a taxi so he could work more hours and make more money." The guests were listening carefully to the story. Sarah felt her heart beating faster. Marcus worked at the restaurant during the day and drove his taxi at night. Sometimes he worked 16 hours a day. He gave most of his taxi money to help pay for my medical bills and our family's expenses. Sarah looked at Marcus, who was looking down at his plate and appeared uncomfortable with all the attention. "But that's not all," David's father said. "Marcus also delayed finishing college so he could keep working and helping our family. He could have graduated 2 years ago, but he chose to put his family first." Sarah felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but they were tears of shame, not joy. She was learning about the real Marcus Rodriguez, not the lazy, incompetent taxi driver she had imagined, but a young man who had sacrificed his own goals to help his family. "Marcus is finally finishing his business degree this year," David's father continued, "and he has saved enough money to start his own company. But for 3 years he drove that taxi every night after his regular job, helping people get where they needed to go and using that money to take care of the people he loves." The guests began to clap for Marcus. David reached over and patted his brother on the shoulder with pride. Marcus looked embarrassed by all the attention, but he smiled and nodded his thanks to everyone. "So when I see Marcus in his taxi," David's father said, "I don't see someone with a simple job. I see a young man with more character and strength than most people twice his age. I see someone who understands what it means to sacrifice for family and work hard for your dreams." Sarah could barely breathe. Every word of David's father's speech made her feel worse about her behavior. She had judged Marcus based on his job without knowing anything about his story or his character. David's father raised his glass. "To David and Sarah and to Marcus, who taught us all what it means to be a good man." Everyone raised their glasses and toasted. Sarah lifted her glass too, but she felt like a fraud. How could she accept praise and celebration when she had been so wrong about Marcus? After David's father sat down, it was time for Marcus to give his speech as the best man. Sarah watched nervously as he stood up and cleared his throat. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate David and Sarah's wedding," Marcus began. His voice was clear and confident. "I've been looking forward to this day for a long time." Marcus looked at David with obvious love and admiration. "David has always been my role model, even though I'm his older brother. When we were kids, David was the one who stood up to bullies. He was the one who helped neighbors with their groceries. He was the one who always saw the best in people." Sarah listened carefully to every word Marcus said. "David taught me that how you treat people says everything about who you are as a person," Marcus continued. "He taught me that everyone deserves respect and kindness, no matter what their job is or how much money they have." Sarah felt like Marcus was speaking directly to her, even though he wasn't looking at her. "I've met all kinds of people in my work," Marcus said. "Rich people, poor people, young people, old people. Some have been kind and respectful. Others have been less kind. But David always reminded me that everyone is fighting their own battles and we should try to be understanding and forgiving." Now Marcus did look at Sarah for a moment. His look was not angry or accusing. It was gentle and encouraging. "Sarah," Marcus said, "I can see how much you and David love each other. David talks about you constantly. He says you're smart, beautiful, and caring. He says you make him want to be a better person every day." Sarah felt tears rolling down her cheeks. She didn't feel like she deserved David's love or Marcus's kindness. "I want to welcome you to our family, Sarah," Marcus continued. "Our family isn't perfect and we don't have a lot of money. But we love each other and we always try to do what's right. I hope you'll feel at home with us." Marcus raised his glass. "To David and Sarah, may your marriage be filled with love, understanding, and forgiveness." Everyone clapped and cheered again. David stood up and hugged his brother. Sarah clapped too, but inside she felt overwhelmed by emotion. As the evening continued, there was dancing and more celebration. Sarah danced with David and she danced with her father. She talked to guests and thanked people for coming to the wedding. But all evening she kept thinking about Marcus's speech and his father's stories. She kept thinking about how wrong she had been about Marcus, and how kind he was being to her despite her terrible behavior. Near the end of the reception, Sarah saw Marcus standing alone on the hotel's outdoor terrace getting some fresh air. She knew this was her chance to talk to him privately. Sarah took a deep breath and walked outside to join him. "Marcus," she said quietly, "can we talk?" Marcus turned to look at her. The outdoor lights made his face look gentle and understanding. "Of course," he said. "What's on your mind?" Sarah struggled to find the right words. She had been thinking about this conversation all day, but now that the moment was here, she didn't know how to begin. "I heard your father's speech tonight," Sarah said, "about how you helped your family when he was sick." "Dad likes to tell that story," Marcus said with a small smile. "He's proud of all of us." "You should be proud of yourself too," Sarah said. "What you did for your family was incredible. Working 2 jobs, helping with medical bills, delaying your own graduation." Marcus shrugged. "Family comes first. That's what my parents taught us." Sarah felt more ashamed than ever. "I had no idea about any of that when we met before." "How could you have known?" Marcus said. "People see a taxi driver and they make assumptions. It happens all the time." "That doesn't make it right," Sarah said firmly. "I was wrong to treat you the way I did. I was wrong to judge you based on your job. And I was wrong to assume I knew anything about who you are or what your life is like." Marcus was quiet for a moment, looking out at the city lights. "I appreciate you saying that, Sarah," he finally said. "But you don't need to keep apologizing. We all make mistakes." "This wasn't just a mistake," Sarah said. "It was cruel and unfair. And the worst part is that you're being so kind to me, even after the way I treated you." Marcus turned to face her fully. "Sarah, do you want to know what I really think?" Sarah nodded, even though she was afraid of what he might say. "I think you're a good person who had a bad moment," Marcus said. "I think you were stressed and running late and you took your frustration out on me. That doesn't make it okay, but it also doesn't make you a terrible person." Sarah started to cry again. "How can you be so understanding? How can you forgive me so easily?" "Because that's what families do," Marcus said simply. "We forgive each other. We help each other become better people. And now you're part of our family." Sarah realized that Marcus was offering her something precious, a chance to start over and prove that she could be better than she had been in that taxi. He was giving her the gift of forgiveness and acceptance, even though she hadn't earned it. I want to be worthy of your forgiveness, Sarah said. I want to be worthy of David's love and worthy of being part of your family. Then be worthy, Marcus said gently. Learn from this experience. Treat people with kindness and respect. Remember that everyone has a story you don't know about. Sarah nodded. I will. I promise I will. Marcus smiled at her, the first real warm smile he had given her since they met. Welcome to the family, Sarah, he said. I think you and I are going to be just fine. 6 months after the wedding, Sarah sat in her new home office looking at a business plan spread across her desk. It wasn't her business plan. It was Marcus's. He had asked her to review it because of her experience in marketing, and she was impressed by how detailed and thoughtful it was. Marcus's plan was to start a transportation company that would provide rides for elderly people and people with disabilities. He wanted to offer comfortable, reliable service with drivers who were trained to be patient and helpful. It wasn't just about making money. It was about serving people who needed extra care and attention. Sarah picked up her phone and called Marcus. Hi, Marcus, she said when he answered. I finished reading your business plan. What do you think? Marcus asked. Sarah could hear the nervousness in his voice. I think it's brilliant, Sarah said honestly. You've identified a real need in the community, and you have a solid plan for meeting that need. Have you shown this to any investors yet? I'm still working up the courage, Marcus admitted. I'm worried they'll think a taxi driver doesn't know enough about business to run his own company. Sarah felt a familiar pang of guilt when Marcus mentioned being a taxi driver. Even 6 months later, she still felt ashamed when she remembered how she had treated him. Marcus, Sarah said firmly, you have a business degree, 3 years of experience in customer service, and you've saved money to start this company by working harder than most people I know. Any investor would be lucky to work with you. Thanks, Sarah, Marcus said. That means a lot coming from you. Over the past 6 months, Sarah had worked hard to build a real relationship with Marcus and David's family. She had learned that David's mother volunteered at a food kitchen every weekend. David's father coached a youth baseball team for kids from low-income families. David's sister was studying to become a nurse practitioner so she could work in community health clinics. The Rodriguez family didn't have as much money as Sarah's family, but they were rich in the things that really mattered. They cared about helping others and making their community better. Sarah had begun volunteering at the food kitchen with David's mother, and it had opened her eyes to how many people struggled just to have enough food to eat. Actually, Sarah continued, I have an idea. My company has a small investment fund for local businesses. Would you be interested in presenting your plan to our board? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Are you serious? You think they might be interested? I think they would be very interested, Sarah said. Especially when they hear your story and see how committed you are. Thank you, Sarah, Marcus said. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Sarah replied. We're family. We help each other. After hanging up with Marcus, Sarah thought about how much her life had changed since the wedding. She still worked at the same marketing company, but she approached her job differently now. She paid attention to the security guards and cleaning staff in her building. She learned their names and asked about their families. She treated everyone with respect, regardless of their job title. Sarah had also made changes in her personal life. She stopped shopping for expensive things just to impress other people. Instead, she and David donated money to charities that helped working families and students who needed financial aid for college. The biggest change was in how Sarah thought about other people. She had realized that her encounter with Marcus in the taxi wasn't really about him at all. It was about her. She had been so focused on her own problems and her own world that she had forgotten to see other people as human beings with their own struggles and dreams. David came home from work that evening and found Sarah in the kitchen making dinner. How was your day? He asked, giving her a kiss. Good, Sarah said. I talked to Marcus about his business plan. I think I might be able to help him find some investors. David's face lit up. Really, that would be amazing. Marcus has been working on that plan for months. He deserves success, Sarah said. He's worked so hard for it. David hugged Sarah from behind as she stirred the pasta sauce. I'm so proud of how close you and Marcus have become. It means everything to me that you two get along so well. Sarah leaned back against David's chest. She had never told David about the taxi incident, and she never would. That was between her and Marcus. But the experience had taught her lessons that made her a better wife, a better person, and a better member of the Rodriguez family. "Your brother is an amazing person," Sarah said. "Your whole family is amazing. I'm lucky to be part of it." A few weeks later, Sarah sat in her company's conference room as Marcus presented his business plan to the investment board. He was wearing a navy blue suit and looked professional and confident. He explained his idea clearly and answered all the board's questions with intelligence and enthusiasm. "What made you think of this particular business model?" one of the board members asked. "I've been driving a taxi for 3 years," Marcus said without any embarrassment. "I've met thousands of passengers, and I've noticed that elderly people and people with disabilities often have trouble finding reliable patient transportation. Many taxi drivers are in a hurry and don't take time to help passengers who need extra assistance. So you see this as filling a gap in the market?" another board member asked. "Exactly," Marcus said. "I want to provide a service that treats every passenger with dignity and respect. I want my drivers to be trained not just in safe driving, but in how to communicate with people who might be scared or confused or in pain." Sarah watched Marcus with pride and admiration. He was turning his experience as a taxi driver into an advantage, not an apology. He understood the transportation business because he had lived it. At the end of the presentation, the board voted unanimously to invest in Marcus's company. As they shook hands with Marcus and congratulated him, Sarah felt tears of happiness in her eyes. After everyone else had left, Marcus turned to Sarah. "Thank you," he said simply. "I couldn't have done this without your help." "Yes, you could have," Sarah said. "You would have found another way. You're that kind of person, you don't give up," Marcus smiled. "Maybe, but it was easier with your support." Sarah thought about the person she had been 6 months ago, impatient, judgmental, and focused only on herself. Then she looked at Marcus, who had forgiven her cruelty and helped her become a better person through his example of kindness and hard work. "Marcus," Sarah said, "can I tell you something?" "Of course. Meeting you changed my life. Not just because you're David's brother, but because you taught me something important about how to treat people and how to see the world." Marcus looked surprised. "I taught you something? I think you've got that backwards." "No," Sarah said firmly. "You taught me that everyone has dignity and worth regardless of their job or their circumstances. You taught me that kindness is more important than status, and you taught me that forgiveness and second chances can change people's lives." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "You know, Sarah, I've been thinking about that day we met in the taxi." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. She still felt uncomfortable thinking about that day. "I was having a really hard time back then," Marcus continued. "I was working 2 jobs, trying to finish school, worried about money. Some days I felt like giving up. People weren't always kind to me, and sometimes I wondered if all the hard work was worth it." Sarah listened carefully. "But then I met you at the rehearsal dinner, and I realized that you weren't really a cruel person. You were just someone who had made a mistake. And when you apologized and tried to make things right, it reminded me that most people are good inside, even when they don't show it." Sarah was surprised. "I helped you?" "You did," Marcus said. "You showed me that people can change and grow. You showed me that it's worth giving people second chances. And you've become not just my sister-in-law, but a real friend." Sarah felt overwhelmed with gratitude and emotion. "I'm so glad we found our way to being friends." "Me too," Marcus said. "And Sarah? I think David chose the perfect wife." 1 year after the wedding, Sarah stood in the same church where she had married David. But this time, she was there for Marcus's graduation ceremony. He had finally finished his business degree, and his transportation company was already serving dozens of customers. As Marcus walked across the stage to receive his diploma, Sarah cheered as loudly as anyone in the audience. David squeezed her hand and smiled at her enthusiasm. After the ceremony, the whole Rodriguez family gathered for a celebration dinner. Marcus's transportation company had hired 5 other drivers, all of whom he had trained to provide compassionate, professional service. "I have an announcement," Marcus said as they were eating dessert. "Next month, I'm going to start offering free rides to senior citizens who need to get to medical appointments but can't afford transportation." "How will you pay for that?" David's mother asked. "Some of my regular customers have offered to sponsor the free rides," Marcus said. "They know how important this service is to the community." Sarah listened to Marcus describe his plans to expand his business and serve more people. She thought about how wrong she had been to judge him based on his job as a taxi driver. Marcus had never been just a taxi driver. He had always been a man with dreams, ambitions, and a deep desire to help others.